The sterile corridors of the maternity hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet exhaustion, a place where joy and fear existed side by side. Nurses moved softly, babies cried behind closed doors, and somewhere between those sounds a young woman sat on the edge of a narrow bed, holding her newborn close as if the world might try to take everything from her again. Her name was Anna, and despite the miracle in her arms, her eyes were clouded with worry. The door swung open without warning, and the click of hard shoes against the floor announced the arrival of the last person she wanted to see. Her mother-in-law stood stiffly in the doorway, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes sharp and unyielding. There was no warmth in her gaze, no curiosity about the child, no hint of compassion. She didn't ask how the birth had gone or whether Anna was in pain. Instead, she crossed her arms and spoke in a cold, clipped voice, telling Anna she had no place here anymore. The family, she said, had made its decision. The baby would be better off without her. She should leave, immediately, before she embarrassed herself further. Anna felt the words hit her like blows. Only days earlier she had gone through hours of labor alone, her husband absent, unreachable, silent. Now this woman, who had never truly accepted her, was trying to erase her completely. Tears welled in Anna's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She clutched her baby tighter, her heart pounding as confusion and fear tangled inside her chest. Where was she supposed to go? How could someone be so cruel at a moment meant for celebration? The mother-in-law scoffed at Anna's silence, mistaking it for weakness. She took a step closer, lowering her voice as if that made her words more powerful. She accused Anna of trapping her son, of being irresponsible, of ruining their family's reputation. Then came the final insult, sharp and dismissive. She told Anna she was abandoned, that she was rushing to the wrong station in life, chasing dreams that were never meant for her. Before Anna could respond, the room filled with another presence. The door opened again, this time slowly, deliberately. A tall figure stepped inside, broad-shouldered, unmistakable. For a split second, the mother-in-law froze, her mouth half open, the next cruel sentence dying on her lips. The man who had entered was someone she never expected to see here, someone whose authority and confidence changed the atmosphere instantly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm was more intimidating than shouting. He introduced himself simply, explaining that he had come because he had been asked to. He looked at Anna first, his expression softening as he saw the exhaustion and pain etched into her face. Then he turned to the mother-in-law, and the air seemed to thicken with tension. He asked her, politely but firmly, what she thought she was doing. She tried to regain her composure, stammering excuses, insisting this was a family matter. He cut her off with a single raised hand. Family, he said, was exactly the point. Family did not abandon a woman who had just given birth. Family did not threaten to take a child away from its mother out of pride or control. The mother-in-law's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The man continued, explaining that everything she was doing had consequences. Legal ones. Moral ones. He reminded her that respect was not something she could demand, it was something she had to earn. With each sentence, her confidence crumbled, replaced by stunned silence. Anna watched in disbelief, hardly daring to breathe. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, she didn't feel alone. Someone was standing between her and the cruelty she had endured for so long. The baby stirred in her arms, letting out a soft sound, as if sensing the shift in energy. The man then turned back to Anna and told her she had nothing to be ashamed of. She was strong, he said, stronger than she realized. Bringing a child into the world was not weakness, it was courage. Whatever mistakes had been made in the past, they did not define her worth as a mother or as a person. He assured her that help was available, that she would not be forced out or silenced. Meanwhile, far from the quiet hospital room, another confrontation was unfolding under bright studio lights. On Jimmy Kimmel's show, what was supposed to be a light-hearted interview with Cena had taken a sharp turn. The audience sensed it before it fully erupted, a subtle tightening in Cena's jaw, a pause that lingered too long. Jimmy pressed a question that crossed a line, poking at personal choices and decisions that Cena had worked hard to keep private. At first, Cena responded calmly, trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground. But the host pushed again, framing the question as humor while ignoring the clear discomfort it caused. The atmosphere shifted. Laughter faded. Cena leaned forward, his voice steady but charged with emotion. He spoke about respect, about the difference between entertainment and exploitation. He reminded everyone watching that even public figures deserved boundaries. When Jimmy attempted to deflect with a joke, Cena erupted, not with anger alone, but with controlled intensity. He explained that strength was not just physical, not just about lifting weights or performing stunts. Real strength, he said, was knowing when to stand up for yourself, when to say, enough. The studio fell silent as the weight of his words settled in. Back in the hospital room, the mother-in-law finally found her voice, but it was weak, stripped of its earlier venom. She muttered something about misunderstanding, about wanting what was best. The man met her gaze and told her that if she truly wanted what was best, she would leave and reflect on her actions. Slowly, stiffly, she turned and walked out, her authority shattered. Anna exhaled a breath she felt she had been holding for months. The man offered her a reassuring smile and told her this was just the beginning, not the end. As he left, the room felt lighter, filled with a fragile but real sense of hope. On television screens, John Cena stood up from his chair, signaling the end of the interview on his own terms. He thanked the audience, nodded once to Jimmy, and walked off the stage, leaving behind a powerful message that echoed far beyond the studio. In two very different places, on the same day, silence followed confrontation, and in that silence, dignity reclaimed its space. The maternity hospital was unusually quiet that morning, wrapped in the dull gray light of early hours when emotions felt heavier and time moved more slowly. In one of the small rooms at the end of the corridor, a young woman lay awake, though she had barely slept since giving birth. Her body ached, her thoughts were tangled, and the tiny bundle resting beside her was both her greatest comfort and her greatest fear. She stared at her baby's face, memorizing every detail, unaware that the fragile peace around her was about to shatter. The door opened sharply, without a knock, and the woman's mother-in-law stepped inside as if she owned the place. Her posture was rigid, her expression stern, and there was no trace of joy in her eyes. She glanced briefly at the baby, then fixed her gaze on the young mother with open disapproval. Without sitting down or offering congratulations, she announced that this situation could not continue. The family, she said, had decided that the child would stay with them, and the mother should leave the hospital as soon as possible. The words were so sudden, so cruel, that the young woman felt dizzy. She tried to understand how a moment meant to mark new life had turned into a courtroom without a judge. She asked quietly what she had done wrong, but the question was met with a scoff. The mother-in-law accused her of ruining her son's future, of being irresponsible, of bringing shame instead of pride. Each sentence cut deeper than the last. When the young woman protested, holding her baby closer, the older woman's tone hardened. She said the young mother had been abandoned, that no one was coming to save her. With a cold smile, she added a final, cutting remark, telling her she was rushing to the wrong station in life, chasing a train that would never stop for her. The cruelty was deliberate, calculated to break her spirit at the weakest moment of her life. Tears slid silently down the young woman's face, but she did not raise her voice. She looked at her child and felt a sudden surge of resolve. Even if the world turned against her, she would not give up her baby. Still, fear clawed at her chest. She was alone, exhausted, and unsure how she would fight a battle she never wanted. Then something unexpected happened. The door opened again, this time slowly, and a man entered the room with a calm confidence that immediately changed the atmosphere. He wasn't loud or dramatic, but his presence carried weight. The mother-in-law turned sharply, irritation flashing across her face, until recognition hit her. Her expression froze, as if her mind couldn't process what she was seeing. The man greeted the young mother first, asking gently how she was feeling. His concern was genuine, his voice steady. Then he turned to the mother-in-law and asked her why she thought it was acceptable to behave this way in a maternity ward. She tried to assert herself, insisting this was a private family matter, but he interrupted her firmly, explaining that cruelty was never private when it harmed someone so vulnerable. He spoke clearly, without raising his voice, outlining the reality she seemed to have forgotten. A mother had legal and moral rights. Intimidation and threats would not erase them. If she continued, there would be consequences far more serious than hurt feelings. With every sentence, the older woman seemed to shrink, her confidence draining away as she realized she no longer controlled the situation. The young mother listened in disbelief, feeling as though someone had finally turned on a light in a dark room. The man reminded her that strength was not the absence of fear, but the decision to protect what mattered most even when fear was overwhelming. He told her she was not abandoned, no matter how much others tried to convince her otherwise. The mother-in-law attempted to speak again, but her words came out disjointed, lacking the sharpness she had wielded so easily before. She realized she had gone too far, and for the first time, she was the one standing on uncertain ground. When the man calmly asked her to leave, she had no choice but to comply. She walked out without another word, the echo of her footsteps heavy with humiliation. As the door closed, the room felt different, lighter, calmer. The young mother let out a shaky breath and finally allowed herself to cry, not from despair this time, but from relief. The man offered a reassuring smile and reminded her that support often appeared when least expected. He told her to focus on healing and on her child, promising that she would not face the future alone. Elsewhere, under the glare of studio lights and the watchful eyes of millions, another kind of confrontation was unfolding. John Cena sat across from Jimmy Kimmel, initially relaxed, laughing. Along with the usual banter. The interview began like any other, filled with jokes and casual questions. But as it progressed, the tone shifted. Jimmy pushed into territory that was clearly personal, framing invasive questions as humor. At first, Cena tried to redirect the conversation, answering briefly and steering it back to his work. But the host persisted, and the audience could sense the tension rising. Cena's smile faded, replaced by a serious, focused expression. He leaned forward and spoke with calm intensity, explaining that some subjects were not entertainment and that respect should never be sacrificed for laughs. When Jimmy attempted to brush it off, Cena's patience finally snapped, not in chaos but in controlled eruption. He spoke about dignity, about the responsibility that comes with having a platform, and about knowing when to draw a line. His words carried the weight of someone who had spent years being misunderstood as just a character rather than a human being. The studio fell silent as Cena stood up, making it clear he would not continue under those terms. He thanked the audience and walked off the stage, leaving behind an unspoken challenge about boundaries and respect. Back in the hospital, the young mother rocked her baby gently, feeling a quiet determination settle in her heart. The encounter with her mother-in-law had nearly broken her, but the sudden intervention had given her something priceless, the belief that she deserved kindness and justice. In two very different places, confrontation had led to the same outcome. Silence followed, not as defeat, but as a reminder that sometimes walking away, or being forced to, is the strongest statement of all.